Great. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about journaling. I'm going to talk a little bit about journaling and why, like how I journal, right, and how that actually helps me. It helps me in a broad sense, in many ways. One is obviously you may have heard that journaling helps with processing emotions, and in actually psychological research, it does help with processing emotions. And what does that help us do? What does that help people do? It helps with metacognition. It's a form of metacognition, thinking about your thinking. And by doing that, you're actually helping to process things less emotionally, right? It's not about being overly emotional and just being randomly emotional. It's actually a way of processing them. Your prefrontal cortex actually does a lot of the work of reasoning and judgment, and the the amygdala actually, that whole system, which kind of regulates your emotions, that that goes haywire, right? And what, in a rough way of understanding, because the brain is actually really complex, we still don't totally understand the whole process, but the prefrontal cortex does have the capacity to regulate that limbic system, that is associated with your emotional reactions. And so the journaling, what does it do? It actually helps to bridge what you might call the delay. And what does that do? What do I mean by the delay? Well, there is a little bit of a delay in processing, from in terms of the what goes on in the limbic system, to uh, that information being processed in the prefrontal cortex, in your rational part of your brain, so to speak. Hi, hey, welcome. Um, and so the delay, and you can understand this intuitively in your everyday experience, if you just I'll give you an example. So have you ever gotten really angry about something and then reacted immediately, or said something to somebody immediately, as a result of that feeling that you had? Of course, we've all experienced this. I've experienced it, and I actually experienced it the other day, but I held myself back. Right, it's just a small thing. Somebody wanted to use the machine, and I had at the gym, and I had been waiting for it already, and then they wanted to get on it, and anyway, it kind of made me angry, and I like had that urge to immediately react, right? Immediately react. However, what journaling helps you do is it helps you slow down that process. It actually helps you self-regulate in general. So when you get into those situations, you're able to more easily reflect. And so there's a gap. What do I mean by the gap or the delay? That what's going on, that emotion, basically, it takes some time. It takes some time, and there's actually some really good research on this. It takes some time for that emotion. It's all data, right, so to speak. It's information. It takes some time for that data or that information to work its way to the prefrontal cortex. And so what is the best thing to do is to actually take a deep breath and delay any action for, different research says different numbers of seconds, but maybe 45 seconds, 60 seconds, 120 seconds, right? Just don't do anything. Don't respond to it at all, for a minimum maybe 60 seconds. Hey, Focus Master, welcome. I'm great. How you doing? So that delay, actually slowing down and stopping ourselves from reacting right away, actually gives the brain time, or gives the prefrontal cortex specifically time to process that information that's coming from your emotional brain, your limbic system. And so that's actually why, slowing down. This is just a mini example of how slowing down, and journaling is a form of this, actually helps you process that, and helps you get better at self-regulation. And so, Focus Master, here you're actually giving an example of daydreaming while studying or doing something. So actually, what you're talking about relates pretty directly, even to what we're talking about with respect to journaling. Because you see, and I'm actually going to talk about free will and versus determinism in an upcoming video, at least partially, with respect to some of the books I'm going to be talking about in a future video. But that's planned for the next couple of weeks. But we could talk about, let's talk a little bit about how free will and determinism kind of comes into play conceptually here. You do have the power of self-regulation, whether you want to say that's okay, it's still deterministic or whatever. Okay, whatever, because it's caused or whatever. But you do have the ability to self-regulate. That is a fact, right? Different you could say different aspects of yourself have the ability to intervene in other aspects of yourself, right? Again, that's metacognition. It's a form of metacognition, but in social cognitive theory, it's called self-regulation. That process. So journaling is so helpful because it is really good at self-regulation. So Focus Master, my response to you would be journal more, right? And start journaling if you don't, and I'll talk about how to really in a second, how I discovered it and how I really started implementing it. I was very skeptical at first, but daydreaming is the result of kind of a I won't say a failure. Failure is too strong of a word, but for lack of a better word, a failure to self-regulate, right? So if I'm daydreaming, I actually used to, they tell me, and I think I remember, when I was in first grade, I actually got held back a grade because I was daydreaming so much because I didn't want to do the schoolwork, right? And I was just staring out into, staring out and not doing my work and things like that. Yeah, Osman, awesome. Journaling, yeah, changed your life. I can imagine it. Are you? I'm curious, Osman. Are you from Turkey? I think isn't Osman a Turkish name, or am I wrong? But I'm actually always interested in where people are coming from, on my live stream, but. But yeah, welcome. Feel free to let me know where you're coming from. So, yeah, journaling is really powerful. What was I gonna say? So yeah, that is a problem of what you want to do is for your daydreaming. I can't give you the answer as to why you're daydreaming or lack of focus and things like that. Welcome, Kushtaf. Welcome. I can't give you the direct answer, but journaling will help a lot because what it's going to do is you ask yourself, right? You can start asking yourself. A good way to start journaling is by just asking yourself basic questions, right? How am I feeling today? How, do I, maybe if it's a problem you're focusing on, right? For you, it's daydreaming. Why do I daydream? How do I feel right before, right? Right before I want to daydream. I feel like daydreaming. What is the feeling that I feel? Is it boredom? Is it anxiety? Is it some feeling of procrastination? There are other things that you could ask yourself, right? Maybe what type of work am I doing when I feel like daydreaming, right? What type of activity am I doing? And if that's really a problem that you want to solve, you can ask yourself these things and enter it in your journal. And I actually do it for maybe 15 minutes a day. The thing about journaling, though, that I've found over time is that you can't really plan it. And what I mean is, although I do sit at my computer and I do journal, and I journal on an actual Google document because it works for me. So I can be consistent with it. When I sit at my computer to journal, I journal and I put in my thoughts for the morning, maybe like that. But what I notice is my best thoughts, and maybe you guys can relate to this, my best thoughts happen randomly, just randomly. Like throughout the day, I'm doing something and then, oh, wow, that's a really interesting idea, or that's an interesting distinction. I haven't looked into that. And then I'll take that moment and then I will actually put it in my journal. I'll put it in my journal in that moment, or I'll block out if I'm really busy and I can't do it at that moment, what I do is I put it in my calendar. I actually make a calendar entry on my Google Calendar. Hey, like write about this topic or this idea right? And just to give a little description so I don't totally lose it. In my calendar, write about this idea, and I'll time block it for later so I can revisit that idea and journal about it. Don't think it has to be this perfect process. Um, Originally from Eritrea. Uh, Born in Sudan. Okay. Oh, very cool. Very cool. I love hearing about like uh, basically citizen of the world, right? People who are from all different places in the world. It's really cool to have all those different experiences. I love to travel. One thing I will say is I I love to I love to understand specifically different ideas from different cultures, and that's sometimes what I journal about as well. Different ideas. So, for instance, I've gotten much more into some of the ideas of Al-Farabi, for instance, uh, and Zhu Xi, right, who's a Chinese thinker, right? Just exploring these lines of thought from these different thinkers to understand. I think you get a fuller picture, a fuller picture really of truth if you understand uh, different ways of thinking from uh, different parts of the world, right, and different cultures. Oh, okay. You used to live in London for 2 years. Um, Nice, nice. Yeah, Istanbul. I haven't been to Istanbul yet. I mean, amazingly historical place. Sudan is actually amazingly historical too. I mean, Sudan is there's a lot of history. I'm a little less familiar with Sudanese history, but to some extent, with the kingdoms and empires that have existed in that region. But yeah, so again, I wanna learn about everything. But I don't know about you guys, but I consistently disappoint myself. That I consistently feel disappointed. I don't know if you can relate to this, but I consistently feel disappointed in the sense that I always have a big pile of books from the library. I have a library that's like within walking distance of my house. I'm really really I'm very very grateful for that. Very lucky for that. But I always have some combination of books that I've bought or books that I've lent from the or taken out of the library. A pile of them, always sitting over there on my cabinet, and I can never get the pile to go down. Right? I'm always because every time I read one book, I see, I look in the references. I've talked about this like book threads, right? In one of my videos, creating a book thread. I look in the bibliography and I say, "Oh, wow, this is interesting. That book looks interesting. Like I see what the author is citing, and I want to read that book and this book and this book." And and then I end up taking like 10 more books out of the library. So by the time I have finished reading, a few more books, I have 10 more books that have piled up. So I and it kind of always reminds me of how ignorant I am. Like I just you know that's kind of the thing. I think you start to realize the more you read, it's this weird thing where it's like the more ignorant you become feel you more ignorant you feel, or the more, actually I will say it's not even a feeling, the more you are aware of your ignorance, right? It's the more you are aware of your ignorance. Like we are all ignorant. I would say even you look at somebody who's very like a very intellectual PhD whatever, and they're ignorant. They're very learned on some area, but then it's like the reality is they're ignorant in so many other places, right? It's just a human condition. It's not really solvable, not soluble, I should say. I finished one book and I have three more. Yeah, I think a lot of us can relate to this. But as a result, here's the great thing about this: is as a result, you end up having so many great ideas to journal about, right? And I end up like that's one of the things that I notice is that I end up with so many great ideas and different ideas, so just things that I can think about in my journal. What this helps you do it's not just a fruitless process. Like what is one of the most tangible ways that journaling helps you? Well, it's just in conversations with people. I don't, people say, well, there's no use. My dog is trying to get my attention. She wants to play. She always wants to play. When I get on the live stream, that's when she wants to play, right? Perfect timing, but okay. Uh, so I just threw her toy over on the bed, and she'll play with the toy. But so the thing is that you get so many great ideas from journaling, right? You just get so many great ideas. And what is the one of the practical benefits is of really being an intellectual or aspiring to that. I don't even know what an intellectual is. I don't know. Many people have so many different definitions, right? Um, Here's the thing. How do you use it? Well, when you're in conversation with people, like it's not about showing off. Let me put it this way. It's not about showing off. Sidhu, welcome. I will actually answer your question momentarily. It's not about showing off. Yes, you can underlying that potentially have that motivation, right? Of course. But try to be aware of that motivation. It's not about showing off, but when you're in conversation with people, people can tell, even if they're not really well informed in a certain field, but they can tell when you are speaking intelligently, when you're thinking intelligently, when you are asking intelligent, insightful questions, when you're nuanced in your thinking, right? I think one of the great signs of somebody who, in my view, would be an intellectual is they're very nuanced in their thinking. What do I mean by that? It's very hard when you've read a lot and you are reading a lot and you're thinking a lot and you're analyzing a lot. It's very hard to subscribe to very blanket statements, generalizations, and general ideas about people or about things, and you start to think in a very nuanced way, right? Okay, well, are there exceptions to that idea, right? Are there different ways of understanding that idea? Um, the key question is how can we educate, like it's great to be ourselves right here and all congratulate ourselves for whatever, but how do we get more people into that mindset? I think there's a pessimistic view here, and Sidhu, I will get to your question in a moment. I think there's a pessimistic view that I don't accept, and not just because it's wishful thinking, but for many reasons. There's a pessimistic view that most people will never think this way, and most people will never want to think this way. Well, I tend to think that there are a lot of obstacles for people to think this way. I think it was Thomas Jefferson for all his flaws, and also Lincoln, who had the same sentiment, Abraham Lincoln, but again for all their flaws. One of the things that they talked about was that if you assume that people are ignorant, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you think people are all ignorant and stupid and uneducated and unworthy to be intelligent and rational, then they're going to end up that way. You're going to do things that fulfill that assumption. And so I think we are assuming the end point we want, and pessimists on this end, they assume the end point that they want or that they think is true, and so it ends up being a self-fulfilling prophecy with how they look and how they confirm that. And so I would disagree. I think with that, we just need to find more ways to embed this in all of our cultures. I know we've got a lot of people all over the world here, but whatever culture that we are in, that we're a part of, whatever people or identity that we're part of, how can we, with our local people around us, how can we imbue that mindset? John, wow, NYC, New York City. Well, I'm in the same city as you. Sorry, not John. Juan. I'm in the Spanish for John, but Juan. Yes, welcome from NYC. Love to have you here. One of my neighbors, I guess. Right? I don't know how close you and I are, but very cool to see somebody else from NYC here. So Sidhu, so that's a question that I pose to all of you, and I pose it to myself. How do we help other people to get into that mindset as well? Right? I think it's very, very doable, very possible. So, Sidhu, how to control myself even though I know I'm not following my plans? I think, Sidhu, do you already journal? Do you already, I mean, journaling is one aspect, but that's the topic of focus right now. But journaling, we were saying before, if you're not on here, journaling is a really well established and well researched way to help you self regulate, meaning through a metacognitive process, meaning a process of thinking about your thinking. Journaling forces you to sit there and think about why something is going wrong, or why something is going right, or what the process is in what are the steps in some process. For instance, how do you control yourself even though you know you're not following your plans? Well, it's a very general question, right? So I'm going to give a general answer if you don't mind. But if you're not following the plans that you set out, probably when you're getting around to, and this happens with exercise, eating healthy, whatever, learning about something, it happens in many different dimensions. When I'm not following my plans, what's going on, right? What's going on in my mind? How am I feeling when, let's say, I want to go to the gym? What excuse am I coming up with? What am I feeling? So I'll give you a concrete example. And I journaled about this. Salman, welcome from Pakistan. Awesome to have you. What is going on in my mind? I'll give you an example. How I used to be with the gym. All right, and I almost fell back into it, which is why it's a constant thing you just have to be aware of. So journaling helped me realize, right? I really wanted to stay more consistent with the gym, but what did I realize through journaling? I realized that I was actually making the excuse every time I wanted to go to the gym. I was making the excuse, well, oh, you know what? I'll skip the gym today because that way I'll actually have more time for whatever project that I'm working on. I'll have more time for that. That is such a seductive excuse, right? It's such a seductive excuse, and it was such a seductive excuse for me that I was able to skip the gym repeatedly. So I realized that that was my thought process through journaling. And yes, Brian. Yes, a gratitude journal is a great start. 10 things you're great. Yes. Oh, okay, perfect. You're hitting on something really good. Gratitude journaling. It is actually effective. It is actually helpful. Gratitude journaling. What am I grateful for? Again, so many things, okay, are about focus. We talk about this. I've talked about videos. I've talked about what's called Bayesian reasoning, right? I've talked about this enough, and frequentist reasoning. I have more videos about this, and I have a video coming up about it also. The ways to use it. But the thing is, why do we need what we do in our reasoning process? And the philosopher Karl Popper talked about this. So what we do in our reasoning process is we tend to confirm things, right? It's confirmation bias. If we're not careful, even Bayesian reasoning can turn into massive confirmation bias. So that's why we need to be super careful, because the method of Bayesian reasoning is to confirm things. So what does this have to do with not to falsify them, right? But to confirm, look for confirmatory evidence. Well, gratitude journaling it's a way of like putting in there a positive bias. We're biased about something. I'm biased about something. I'm either going to notice all the negative things, or I'm going to notice all the positive things, or somehow I'm going to notice a mixture of them. Why not? Why not? What is the reason that I shouldn't notice some of the things that are good in my life, right? That I'm thankful for, that I am grateful for. And the usefulness of this isn't, yes, it's useful in and of itself, right? To notice what you're grateful for. But also, here's why it's also useful and helpful in a very practical way, is it actually has been shown to help you notice more opportunities, more uh, um, really, truthfully, more opportunities for growth, for could it be even career or whatever. It helps you notice those things when they do come about. The thing about having a negative bias all the time and having negativity bias, right? Confirming, right, and seeing all those negative things in an unrealistic way is that there may be opportunities around you. There may be things that you can positively do to change things in your life, but you're not noticing them. Right? You're not noticing them because you're not looking for them specifically, and that is kind of part of how our brain works. It really does. So, and Aravind Sami. Yes, our thoughts are the barriers of our thoughts have errors and we don't try to control them. Yes, just allow them but don't believe them as true without evidence. And Gershin, you said, what's your experience and take on forgetting the day when you sit to journal? I think what you're saying is forgetting to journal. Yeah, sometimes I will. Yeah, sometimes I'm too busy. I too busy is a cop out actually. And I recognize that. Sometimes I don't prioritize it. There we go. Sometimes I don't prioritize it if I have so many things that I'm doing in a day. And so what I'll do is I will acknowledge that, and then maybe sometimes I feel like, oh, I don't have something to say, or like I'm experiencing some block on my thinking. Yeah, it happens, right? So, but I try to if I don't do it that day, I try my best not to even skip one day. At least 5 days a week. On the weekends, I kind of detach, but from structure, I actually detach from structure more on the weekends, which is it's helpful for me. Um, but I do my best to get back on the horse the next day. Focus Master, which book is good for beginners? If you could be more specific, because there are many books on many topics. So, Aravind Sami, Negative Cognitive Bias. Yes, definitely. Um, yes, I hope you're doing well as well. Yeah. And I see all the top fans in the chat. Yeah, guys, I'm fans of you. Um, so Shawnee, yeah, Shawnee, I actually talked a lot about journaling just even before you came on the live. So feel free to watch the replay on my channel if you would like to get everything that I talked about. But yeah, I'm actually going to cut it here for today, guys. And hopefully this gave you some inspiration for. Okay, Focus Master, feel free to reach out on any of my videos, comment or whatever have you. I'll get back in touch with you. I really will. And guys, I really love spending every Wednesday with you at this time. Really love it. You guys are awesome. You guys makes this community great. So I really appreciate you. Feel free to check out the rest of my channel, subscribe. Feel free to check out my Critical Thinking Academy if you want to work more closely with me one-on-one. And appreciate you guys, and I will see you. Thank you, Brian. I will see you all next time.